Good morning, everybody. It is Man Coverage. This is Knoxville, Nate, and James Bonneville. It is July 17th, 2022. We're about halfway, a little bit over halfway through the month, rolling through the middle of summer, getting ready for fall football. Camp is right around the corner, and guys are starting to finish up their workouts and get ready to get out there. Mr. Bonneville, how are you doing today, sir?
Eddie better be a crime.
I like to hear that, sir. The college football news continues to roll in as we go along through the summer. The kickoff date just gets closer and closer. That Labor Day weekend, that Ohio State Notre Dame game is right around the corner. It's going to be here before we know it. But we got a lot of things to talk about today. We're going to dig into the top tight ends for 2023 fantasy football and otherwise. Really got a great list that Mr. Bonneville researched and put together. I've got my thoughts on that list. He's got his thoughts. We're going to share those with you today. We're also going to get into a little recruiting action, as this is one of the most back and forth recruiting battles that I've ever seen in the past 10 or 15 years. I mean, it's every day somebody lands somebody huge. The rankings, shuffle. Obviously, what stands on 7/17/2022 is not what's going to be our final, order in the recruiting rankings. But it's good to go ahead and take a dive because everybody's filling out their list pretty heavily, and we've already got several commits. I mean, I think Notre Dame is right now listed at number one, and they've already got 20 commitments at this point, and Ohio State's right behind them at number two with 18 commitments. So we're going to go ahead and start talking about that because, James, I mean, it's been crazy. I mean, we talked about it last week a little bit, how Ohio State had that role where they landed 3 of the top 10 wide receivers in the country back to back to back, which was crazy to me. And then they landed 3 of the top defensive players back to back to back. But Notre Dame won't go away. What's really stood out to you so far with the recruiting and the commitments that have already released where they're going to go?
Well, I mean, you're seeing more commitments happening earlier and earlier right now, but I think the one thing that shocked me the most is the strength that Marcus Freeman has had on the recruiting front. I mean, not only him, but Tommy Rees and Al Washington, the assistant coaches there, have really stepped up the ball game from what we saw before with Coach Kelly at the helm in South Bend. I mean, we're really getting back to when Lou Holtz was there during his heyday, and they were recruiting extremely well. I mean, you look at that class, you start off with Keon Keeley, the edge rusher out of Tampa, Florida, Berkeley Prep, 6'6", 242. I mean, the number 1 edge rusher in the country, number 2 in the state of Florida, number 8 overall. I mean, it goes back to where Notre Dame is at their strength. They're great at recruiting their offense and developing their offensive line, defensive line, and linebackers. And they're showing it right up again, getting a guy like Keeley. I think he's kind of a different type of player than they've gotten before at that edge position. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really like Keeley. I mean, he's the number 1 edge rusher in the country. So obviously getting him to commit on 6/28 was huge for them. I think he's going to be a difference maker. There's no doubt about it. But I'm looking through, digging into Notre Dame first. I'm looking through their list. And the one thing that I'm not seeing that concerns me is the same thing we didn't see when Mr. Get Down on the Dance Floor, Brian Kelly, was there. I don't see a quarterback.
Yeah.
Where's the 5-star quarterback? I don't know who their quarterback's going to be this year. I don't know who their quarterback is going to be in the 2023 class. Why can Notre Dame not recruit the top end quarterbacks? I mean, they got the number 1 pass rusher in the country. I kind of figured, I don't know, with the type of success that Marcus Freeman has had recruiting at Cincinnati, recruiting at Ohio State, now recruiting at Notre Dame, I thought that maybe once Brian Kelly left, they'd be able to bring in one of these blue chip quarterbacks, but it still hasn't happened. Why can't they get a quarterback? And do you see them landing a big time quarterback in 2023?
I mean, you look at their offer list right now, every single quarterback they offered has already committed to another school. I mean, you start off with Arch Manning. We knew he wasn't going to go to Notre Dame to begin with. Heck, Malachi Nelson has been a commit to USC since Lincoln Riley left to go from Oklahoma to USC. Our George's nephew that's going to Tennessee, Dante Moore, literally just committed to go to Oregon. Jackson Arnold's going to Oklahoma. I mean, you go down the list. I mean, they lost out to a Clemson commit and Christian Vizina out of Birmingham, Alabama. Avery Johnson out of Mays, Kansas is going to Kansas State, and Austin Novosad is going to Baylor. It makes me start to wonder, maybe they have a backup plan of trying to get somebody to flip, or maybe they're interested in looking at the portal and seeing what's going to happen there long term, because let's be honest, there's a lot of quarterbacks that are sitting out there and that they could bring one in, much like they did with Cohn coming from Wisconsin.
They may have to. I mean, I think that's why they went out and got Cohn, who didn't prove to be the difference maker, but you can't harp them for trying. They may have to do that again. And since we're talking recruiting today, it's kind of cool that we just had a commitment about 37 seconds ago, released on all the major networks. Jelani Thurman, 4-star tight end out of, I think he's from Georgia, just committed to Ohio State. So we may see the tides turn a little bit more. Maybe if we refresh this, I don't even think they've updated this on these lists, but Jelani Thurman, who has been a prospect that's kind of been crystal balled to Ohio State for a while. We're talking tight ends today, so it kind of is perfect that he committed right now, and he's headed to Ohio State. And we talk about Notre Dame and Ohio State, the two top teams right now that have kind of been going back and forth. Why don't we go ahead and jump to Ohio State, since they just grabbed Jelani Thurman? I don't know if he's even on their list yet. No, he's not. So this news just came out, but let's talk a little bit about Ohio State. I mean, well, I cannot believe the wide receivers they've been pulling. I mean, we talked about it last week. They got Brandon Inniss, the number 1 or number 2 ranked receiver in the country based on whatever rankings you're looking at. Carnell Tate, who's the number 2 or the number 3 receiver, depending on who you're looking at. And then the number 9 receiver overall, Noah Rogers. And now they just landed one of the top tight end commitments in the country from the state of Georgia. Is obviously, I'm talking about Jelani Thurman. So, I mean, what is going on there with our boy, Brian Hartline? I mean, he's ranked the number 1 recruiter in the country right now for a reason. How's he doing this? And what do you think about the guys that they've got committed so far, if you now include Thurman on that list, since he did just commit?
I mean, you look at this list year after year after year after year. It's not even their first 1 or 2 deep. They're going 4 deep with 4 and 5-star commitments. And I'm shocked that they're not getting more pushback. But when you recruited the 10th, 11th, and 12th pick in the draft, that says something right there. Yeah. And I mean, you look at Jackson Smith and Jigba when he comes out. I'm telling you right now, he's a top 5 pick. As long as he doesn't have a season-ending injury, he's going to be a top 5 pick. I mean, keep going down the line. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a stud at the next level. And I mean, heck, you even go down farther from that list. I mean, you got Noah Rogers from Rollsville, North Carolina, but they've got more. I mean, he has just recruited. I mean, Bryson Rogers out of Wiregrass in Zephyr Hills, Florida. I mean, it is. You start to wonder: is there too many people at that position, or maybe they're going to move somebody to somewhere else, maybe to a cornerback or something like that? Because there's only one football at the end of the day. But Brian Hartline showing out, and it makes me wonder if I'm a middle tier school right now. Why am I not looking at a Brian Hartline to come and be my next head coach?
Shh. Let's not say that out loud, buddy. Let's leave him right where he is. I like what he's doing. He's making me happy. I mean, I get it. I understand why these guys want to go to the Ohio State University. I mean, they see the success of the wide receivers that have come out in the last 5-6 years, and the ones that are on the roster right now, not only are they good when they get there, but they're being developed and they're getting better. And then they're getting drafted high, and then they're going on and they're producing at the NFL level. So I understand it. Another big recruit that they got last week, maybe 1 week ago today, it actually happened right after our show, was Jason Moore, who's a defensive lineman, 6'6", 255, out of DeMatha Catholic, which is a national powerhouse.
Football, basketball powerhouse.
Powerhouse. That's where
yeah.
Chase Young went. They've gotten some guys that have gone to the Ohio State in the past, and Jason Moore is committed to Ohio State as well, and that was the most recent defensive guy. But they're not just getting offensive guys. I mean, they landed him as well as a couple of guys that we mentioned on the show last week, Kayan Lee, the cornerback out of Texas.
What about Deshaun Johnson out of Wharton in Tampa? I mean, it's solid cornerback. They got a commitment in April. They just keep doing it over and over again. It's going to be interesting to watch what Jim Knowles does in that 4-2-5, and what he does to bring and help develop that back end of that lineup. Because let's be honest, the last few years they've struggled in their back seven.
Yeah, well, I mean that's why Jim Knowles is there, and hopefully he's going to fix all the problems that have existed on that defensive backfield. I mean, the talent level is not the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, the scheme, the defensive play calling, that's been the issue so far. And, one guy who is also, kind of been pointing towards the Buckeyes is the number one safety in the country, Caleb Downs. That is a guy who, is looking at quite a few schools right now. Some people think he's going to go to Alabama. Some people are thinking Georgia. Notre Dame's on his high list. Clemson, Ohio State. Those are the top guys on there. What do you think about Caleb Downs right now? The number one safety in the country, the number one prospect in the state of Georgia, and the number 11th prospect overall. Any thoughts about him? Do you think he's going to go, join the Buckeyes, or do you think he's going to stay down south and potentially go to Bama or Georgia?
That's a good question. I think, honestly, this may be one that's going to last a little longer in recruiting front. I mean, the kid's a supreme talent, ranked 11th nationally. It's going to be interesting. I personally think he's going to go to Alabama. I mean, they've had so much success at that safety position overall. But it's going to be a battle between Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. Probably you got to throw Notre Dame in there too as well, because Notre Dame has developed safeties pretty well. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised there's a fourth team that runs in this mix too as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some talk about Clemson and others that may potentially join that list, but we'll have to wait and see. I mean, there's guys committing every day. Question for you: why do you think guys are committing earlier right now? And is there a reason? I mean, do they just want to get it out of the way?
I would think so. I mean, it's tough to tell. I mean, once you get that behind you, now you can really focus on the season and get ready for your signing date in December. But you and I both know that some of those guys hold off until the later signing period too as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm looking at the, I'm looking at the list right now of the remaining prospects that have not committed. And obviously, Cormani McClain, who I mentioned a minute ago, he's still on the Ohio State target list. A lot of people, crystal ball, have him going to Florida. David Hicks is number 5 overall recruit. He is a defensive lineman out of Texas. Pretty sure he's probably going to go to A&M. But the next guy who really has not, announced where he's going to go either way is the number 7 guy, Nicholas Harbor, who is out of D.C. Our boy Rico McCoy knows a little bit about this dude. He's the number 7th overall prospect in the country, and kind of listed as an athlete right now because they're not sure whether he's going to go offense or defense. 6'5", 225. He's got Michigan, Miami, Maryland, LSU, Georgia on his list. Kind of crazy that there's really no prediction about where this guy's going to go. There's also really no indication of what position he's going to play. For a guy to be ranked this high, there's a lot of question marks about this dude. What do you think you see for this guy coming out as far as Harbor goes, and where do you think he might land?
This sounds strange, but this is the type of kid that Mike Loxley would get at a Maryland. I think Mike Loxley has got to do something, and I think this year could be it. I mean, you look at Tunga Viola and their receiving core, and he has recruited well. He just has had serious problems with injuries, but Nicholas Harbor really would fit well in that scheme, and they've recruited well. They just got to get over that hump, but he's got an interesting list of people. I think in LSU, he could get on the field very quickly, but I mean, he's holding his cards pretty close to the vest.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And there's a lot of question marks surrounding his recruitment right now because nobody really knows where he's going to go. He hasn't announced a date, to my knowledge, where his commitment's headed. But, we look at these other prospects that are on here, and, a lot of them have committed on this list. I mean, this is the most people I've ever seen in the top 50 that have already announced where they're headed.
Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy to me. And some of the guys that haven't announced yet, we do kind of have an idea of where they're going to go. One more prospect that I want to discuss who has not announced yet. I want to get your feelings on it. This is a dude that has made a couple of trips recently. He visited the Ohio State University. His dad has, talked a lot about, knowing Larry Johnson and getting to know him and liking Larry Johnson. But this is another kid from out west. And obviously we know his brother, DJ, who plays quarterback for Clemson. And I'm talking about Matayo Ugalele out of St. John Bosco in Bellflower, California. This is the number 2 edge rusher in the country. This guy is number 3 prospect coming out of California, 6'4", 255. Whoever gets this guy, the sky's the limit. And, he's got Ohio State, Oregon, USC, and Alabama are, I think he's kind of narrowed it down to those 4. Any thoughts about where DJ's little brother is going to go? Or we might as well just call him Mateo at this point because he's kind of his own man. And I think, this is going to be a huge get, whoever grabs this dude.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have a feel for this one at all. I mean, quite frankly, it would be interesting watching what happens this year with his brother at Clemson, because if things don't work out, I could see him transferring out and they becoming a package deal somewhere else. I mean, I really cannot get a good feel for this one bit on how this one's going to transfer out. But I mean, St. John Bosco out of Bellflower, California is a phenomenal program. I personally, this is going to sound kind of strange, but watch Oregon. I think Oregon could be a player in this mix because they are recruiting sneaky well, and they only have 11 commitments, but their commitments are very strong. And I could see Oregon playing a much greater role on this. And quite frankly, I mean, a DJU could end up at Oregon next season. Since, I mean, you're only going to have one more year at quarterback with their current regime there. I could see that potentially working there.
That's a great point that you bring up because, let's think about it. We've already discussed at length. We had a little preview show where we talked about Clemson and what we think is going to happen next year. And both of us kind of think that their recruit, Cade Klubnik's going to take over at quarterback for him, if things don't go well. And it's not an indictment on DJ. It's just kind of, there's so much pressure on him right now. And there's so much focus on him because of the way things went last year. Both of us, you and I, don't think everything that happened was his fault.
Oh, God, no.
But he got all the blame.
Yes.
And, I just think back to the year previous when he had to go in when Trevor Lawrence got injured and the guy looked like, an amazing talent and looked like he was going to just tear it up the following year. But
you go back to that Notre Dame game. I mean, he was unreal in that game. I
Yeah.
mean, the one thing that kind of shocked me watching him in that game was I thought he was going to have better wheels.
Yeah.
Um, he's your old traditional 1990s quarterback, drop back, sit there and throw the ball. He's doesn't like running, which if I'm an NFL guy, I would freaking love. I mean, last year though, I mean, they had no slot, and
Yeah.
that's been a vital part. I mean, Hunter Renfro, Amari Rodgers, go back through Clemson when they've had that slot player, they have taken to the next level.
Yeah, he had to run last year. He was running
Yeah,
for his life because that offensive line was not up to par with what we've seen out of Clemson in the recent history. So he definitely was running for his life back there. We're going to see what happens with him. But I could see that. I mean, I like your point. I think, if things don't work out, if he transfers to Oregon, I could see his brother following suit. They got the number one player in the country not too long ago when they landed Kayvon Thibodeau. And it didn't work out too bad for him as he was a top 5 pick by the New York Giants. So
yeah.
I think that kind of lays it. I know it's a new staff out there, but I think this new staff even gives Mateo a bigger chance of going with Dan Lanning and all the stuff he's done and all the guys he's put into the pros at Georgia. I think that helps Oregon's cause now that he's their coach. Talking about the tight ends real quick here. Let's get into this list you put together and talk about the tight ends. We got people, obviously, our listeners that want to know who do I take with my first pick at tight end? Who can I grab that's going to help me get some points? Obviously, number one on everybody's list is Mr. Bowers. And, we are not alone in our love affair with Mr. Bowers. He is ranked the number one tight end by PFF. He was in the conversation for best tight end in America last year, even though he was a true freshman. He earned a 91.7 PFF grade. This guy was just unbelievable in his first year. And is there a chance of him potentially getting better in year 2?
I think so. I mean, honestly, I look at this tight end class, and there are definitely tiers. And the first tier is 2 guys. And you could go – I went back and forth between Bowers and Michael Mayer, who are going to have as their number 2. But I went with Bowers specifically because you look back at Stetson Bennett's still going to be the quarterback there, and he is not great on the boundary, which means they got to go over the middle. And Brock Bowers being their number 1 receiver coming back. I mean, you look at his numbers from last year, 56 catches, 882 yards, 13 touchdowns as a freshman. Now you bring him back and you have more depth at that position. You have Eric Gilbert there as well as Darnell Washington. I mean, there is incredible depth at the tight end position. They're by far the best tight end grouping or room in the country. I just think it's a home run pick, and you got to go with the Napa High School out of Napa, California kid.
Yeah, and my biggest thing with Bowers was his just, showcase in game 1. I mean, think back that matchup, Georgia versus Clemson. I know it wasn't the offensive show that we were all hoping for, and we all probably kind of guessed that it wasn't going to be a high-scoring game with Georgia's defense. But, I mean, to come out and, be a 10-3 ball game, it's Bowers' first ever game on the field. He's the leading receiver for Georgia with 6 catches for 43 yards.
Yeah.
And we all knew right away, like, whoa, this guy is for real. And then he comes back in week 2 and has over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then it just kept going from there. This guy, had over 100 yards versus Kentucky. He had 139 yards against Alabama. I mean, this guy is, I think you made a good choice for number 1. I mean, I like Mayer out of Notre Dame, but I just don't think you can say that anybody is better than Bowers just based on what happened last year. The interesting thing was the next guy on the list. We talked about this a little bit off air. I was a little bit surprised that you went with this guy, number 3 overall. I like him, but I don't know. I just wasn't thinking number 3. Tell me why you had Michael Trigg, the guy that played at USC, transferred to Ole Miss. Why do you like him at 3? And do you see him being as effective for the Rebels as he was for the Trojans?
Oh, well, I mean, he never really got to show out completely for USC. And you look at the system that Lincoln Riley ran, it really didn't fit him. But going to Ole Miss, he's got a couple different things working for him. One, the top 3 receivers are gone. So the the next receiver back is going to be Jonathan Mingo, who I think is going to have a very good year. But for Ole Miss to take that next step with Jackson Dart at quarterback, I think that Michael Trigg's going to have a heavy dose, and he is super athletic. This is a kid that just blows off the page, and I think could take that next level. Now, Sam Laporta could be right there with him. I view them kind of in that same tier too as well, because you look at the Iowa really develops that position incredibly well. But, Michael Trigg is an insane talent with a lot, not as much depth at that receiver position. That's why I put him at number 3 right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he made a good choice going to Ole Miss. I mean, the regime was changing. Lincoln Riley was coming in as the head coach. He had to go out and find a system that he thought was best for him. And that's what this transfer portal, the positive of it, in my opinion, is that a guy like this who, didn't sign up to be coached by Lincoln Riley, didn't sign up for these coaches that were coming in, the new tight ends coach and the new regime that was taking over. That's not who he committed to. So giving these kids the ability to go out and find, a place that's, basically good for them and that is essentially a start over, a refresh on their recruiting, I think is a good thing. So I'm interested to see how it goes down there. But, let's be honest, our boy Lane has proved that he can get it done offensively.
Absolutely.
Even in the SEC.
I think one thing I think a lot of people forget about, because they're just looking at the player themselves, is look who the running back is going to be at Ole Miss and Zach Evans. I mean, Zach Evans is a real talent, and you're going to see slots, linebackers, and safeties keeping their eye on him because he's going to be the focal point of that offense. He is a real talent. Finally, he ends up at a school because that kid couldn't make a commitment to save his life during his recruiting circus. But now, after leaving TCU, he's at Ole Miss. This is going to be interesting because Zach Evans is big, and now you're going to allow Michael Trigg to sneak back there. And last year alone, 15.6 yards per catch for a tight end, which is a massive number.
Yeah, and I do. I like his choice, and I think he's going to get the ball. And regardless of who ends up winning that quarterback battle, they've got two good QBs.
Yeah,
that's never a bad thing in my mind. I mean, they're going to go with somebody, and they're going to have somebody in the wings in case they get injured, and that offense is going to roll, in my opinion, just like it did last year with Matt Corral. So I think that's a good spot for him. Number 4 on your list is a guy out of Iowa, Sam Laporta. Talk to us a little bit about him. Why do you have him in the top 5? And we obviously know about the struggles with Iowa on offense. Do you think this guy's still a valid option at tight end in fantasy, even though Iowa's offense sucks?
Absolutely. 100% agree. I mean, you look back at that offense, there were 2 things that worked well for them last year. Their center and their tight end. Their tight end, Sam Laporta, 3-star prospect out of Highland, Illinois, built himself up from being a bigger receiver to being that prototypical Iowa tight end. I mean, think about all the Iowa tight ends that have come out of there during the Ferentz regime. George Kittle, Dallas Clark. You can keep going down the list. They have always been extremely good at that position. Laporta keeps that tradition rolling. Last year alone, 53 catches, 670 yards, 12.6 average. The only downside, 3 touchdowns. I think that number goes up since now that Tyler Goodson's gone and Gavin Williams is going to be taking over the back end. It's you got to believe it. I mean, heck, you look at the numbers. You could add up the next 3 receivers between Keegan Johnson, Regini, and Charlie Jones till you get his numbers of receptions. So that says a lot how much they influence the tight end in that Iowa offense, because a lot of what they do is play action and that tight end's rolling back the other way.
Yeah, and even more recently, we've got to mention Noah Fant and Hawkinson. I mean,
exactly.
Those were 2 guys that came out, I believe, the same year,
They
And
did. They
we're
did. They're
both,
both first-round draft picks.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Both guys that got drafted in the first round, pretty impressive for Iowa, who's not really known as an offensive juggernaut, but they definitely have produced tight ends. So I think this guy might be next.
And honestly, you look like if you're going to compare Laporta to one of those two, because Hawkinson and Font were very different types of players. He is more in the Hawkinson role than the Font role. I mean, Font could line up on the edge, and because of his size and length, could really take it as a receiver too as well, where Hawkinson was just so good in the red zone. I think people really don't understand how unbelievably good. And honestly, I'm high on him this year in fantasy football on the pro side. So,
yeah, no, there's no doubt. The next couple guys you've got is the gentleman out of Utah and also Marshawn Ford out of Louisville. Talk to me about those two guys. And then after you talk about them, I want to talk a little bit about South Carolina, who has two guys that some people have ranked high. First off, let's talk about the Utah tight end, Brant Kuth. What do you like about him? And then also Marshawn Ford from Louisville. What about those two guys do you think is good? And do you think they will have the numbers to warrant a high draft pick in fantasy 2022?
now I would hold off on drafting after I get past Laporta. I think you could hit a lot of other areas first before going back to tight end if you have a tight end slot on your roll. I like Brant Kuth a lot. It's just there's not the depth at the tight end position that there once was. You look at him, this is a kid who led the country in broken tackles. This is heck, go back and watch the Rose Bowl. He was really a problem for the Ohio State offense during that first half. And really, that's why the game was such a shootout, is much of the work of the Katy, Texas Cinco Ranch High School product. I mean, he was not highly recruited coming out of high school. I mean, this was a low 3-star kid who really took it to the next level. I mean, heck, his next biggest offer after Utah was Colorado. And then you go Boise State. He was getting mostly mid-major looks. And that's why you look at the development that has happened under this Utah regime. He really fits the bill and really is that next level, that number 5 guy.
Yeah, honestly, I'm very high on Utah this year.
I am too.
As far as a team coming out of the West, a team coming out of the Pac-12, as the Pac-12 stands right now, Utah is my favorite. And Utah is a team, in my opinion, that can compete not only for the Pac-12 championship, but I think potentially a run at the college football championship. And I say that because what I saw in the Rose Bowl. I mean, this is a complete team. Losing their linebacker, is going to be rough. But I think they've got enough offensively and defensively to compete all over the field. And they got their quarterback coming back too. I mean, this guy is a veteran. He's not the highest ranked quarterback in college football, but damn it, I love this guy in the game. I mean, think about it. If he doesn't go down in that Ohio State game, and I hate saying this because I am a blatant Buckeye homer, but what's his name? Rising?
Cameron Rising. Yeah.
Rising. Okay, I pronounced it correct. Good. If he doesn't get hurt, there's a very good chance that Utah wins that football game. And not only their tight end am I high on, I'm high on their whole team. Am I crazy?
No, not at all. I mean, you look at what the Pac-12 South has coming back. I mean, honestly, you could go them or USC at the top, but I would focus more on Utah right now because, I mean, year after year after year, they come down hard downhill. They're a smash mouth team. They've got an old school 1990s, 1980s Big Ten edge to them. I mean, heck, go back to the year when Utah played Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and Utah took it to them. Like, it wasn't like I've never seen a game where Nick Saban got really outcoached. He got outcoached in that game significantly. And if people don't remember it, go back on YouTube and rewatch that game because Andre Smith got used and abused in that game, and it hurt his draft stock.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I agree with you. The other question I had for you was, I was looking after you sent me your list. I went back and I looked at a couple of these guys on um, the PFF list, and they not only had Brant, your boy Brant out there for Utah, but they also had the second tight end for Utah, Dalton Kincaid,
Yeah.
listed as one of their top tight ends. So that was a team that had two guys on this list. And then they also had Jaheim Bell out of South Carolina, as well as Austin Stogner out of South Carolina. So that's two teams that have two guys in the top 10 of PFF's tight end race. What do you think about the South Carolina guys? And also, what about Kincaid from Utah?
Honestly, I think Kincaid's very good. The problem is, I think he's going to get covered up by Brandon Kuth quite a bit. So the numbers aspect of it, I think I'd be looking more for 2024 if you're thinking from a dynasty perspective. Now, South Carolina, the quarterback situation, bringing Rattler in, is only going to help benefit them. Yeah. I think Jaheim Bell really could take it to the next level. I'm higher on Bell than Stogner, but both are very good talents. Now, there's a couple names out there that are farther down the list that are going to be intriguing. You got Cameron Latu out of Alabama. Until we figure out who besides Jermaine Burton, there's going to have to be a number 2 resource there to get the ball out to. Eric Gilbert. I thought he was Eric Gilbert. Now it's called Eric Gilbert. The Georgia product before LSU. It seemed like that guy committed all over the place. The talent is real, but I'm not going to buy it till I see him really on the field. Payne Durham out of Purdue. Purdue's going to throw the ball this year, and David Bell no longer exists. And Durham had a sneaky good year last year. And then also Isaac Rex out of BYU, who it seems like year after year, BYU always has that tight end ready to go.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And I'm very high on the Purdue Boilermakers as well. I watched them take down a team that was getting touted all over the place and is getting touted this year all over the place in the SEC, and that's Tennessee.
Yeah.
People apparently forget that they went into that game without their number 1 wide receiver in Bell and still beat them. And I'm talking about Purdue, and I love their quarterback, O'Connell. It's O'Connell, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, making sure I'm right. I love their quarterback. He really impressed me in that game. Not only was Bell not playing, but Bell's number 2 guy on their receiving core got hurt early in the ball game, and it didn't seem to slow down their offense at all. And I watched them too. They had their struggles, especially in the first half versus the Buckeyes, but they put up big time numbers in the second half. And maybe some of that was the defense backing off, but I'm very high on him, and I think that this tight end is going to produce big time in fantasy. And I'm talking about Durham from Purdue. The next guy you've got on your list is we talk about all these teams that have 2 guys, and Georgia's another one in Eric Gilbert. I don't know much about Eric Gilbert. Talk to me a little bit about him and why you've got him on your list.
Eric Gilbert was a uber recruit coming out of high school. Like everybody and their dog, when he was coming out of Georgia, he was the recruit, and it was a dogfight. 6'5", 248, runs like a deer. The Marietta, Georgia product literally was one of the most sought-after tight ends, and LSU ended up getting him. Well, he ends up going to LSU and doesn't get on the field at all, and end up just transferring. And people started wondering what was going on because he was all over the place on his commitment board. Finally comes back home, goes to Georgia, which, I could see from from a familiarity standpoint coming back home. But they already had a packed room to begin with. And then he doesn't play last year as well. He has still not gotten on the field. But everything you've seen from every scout across the country, this kid is the uber tight end recruit that people have talked about over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, maybe that's why I hadn't heard a lot about him, because he hadn't gotten on the field. That
Yeah.
kind of makes sense. But we'll see what happens. And we were talking a minute ago about the two guys from South Carolina, and I want to get your feelings real quick. We're going to have a guest join us here in just a few minutes. We're going to have TJ Downing, former offensive lineman from Ohio State. He's going to jump on here in just a few minutes. But before we get to him, I do want to talk about South Carolina. We just talked about their two tight ends. We saw what Shane Beamer did last year with no quarterback. What's he going to do with Spencer Rattler? Do you see Spencer Rattler blowing up in 2022? And obviously having these two tight ends, I think, is going to be kind of a security blanket for this kid in his first year in the SEC. What do you think? What do you expect from him this year?
I want to see how he comes out of the gates. This is a kid who, he didn't do bad last year. The problem is he didn't go vertical enough, because the way their offense was set up, it didn't allow, everybody was keeping everything in front of him. And they didn't have a good enough offensive line or running game situation to really benefit him. And Rattler's not known for his legs.
No.
And I think everybody was playing just to, make him do the 10, 12, 15-yard drives and have him beat you that way. And I just think it really slowed him down and frustrated him, because let's be honest, going into last year, not only was the preseason favorite for the Heisman Trophy, he was the preseason pick for the first pick in the draft.
Oh yeah, he was the number one quarterback. People forget he was the number one quarterback in the country.
You look at his schedule. He starts off really nice at home against Georgia State.
Yeah,
but then they go to Arkansas and they play at home against Georgia. He is going to be judged very quickly. The one thing I think that's got going in his favor is both of those games are 11 a.m. kickoff Central, 12 noon Eastern, both on ESPN. We're not going to be playing under the lights, so you're not going to have all the eyes on you. But I think if he comes out strong in the Georgia State games and gets some good drives starting in the Arkansas game, we could potentially be seeing something here.
Yeah, and that I'm glad you brought that up, because that's where I wanted to go next, was this Georgia offense. They got it done, and I got to admit I was critical of little Stetson all year long, and he won the frickin' national championship. So I was wrong on him. I didn't think he would be able to do it, but he effing got it done. But I'm going to be interested to see what he does this year. So that game will be huge, in my opinion. A big matchup in the SEC East, and two guys that I'm going to be watching closely in Spencer Rattler and also Stetson, little Stetson Bennett.
The fourth. Remember, he's a fourth.
Yeah, the fourth. Well. What?
Stetson Bennett the fourth. Yeah, exactly.
All
but
right.
You look back at that Georgia team last year. That defense run the team. Was running the team. Now their offense has got to step it up. So
hey, he made that throw in that game, and that's all that really matters. History will remember that. So anyway, I like your list, James. I appreciate you bringing that to the table today. We're going to go ahead and jump over to our guest here, friend of the program, and one of the guys with one of the best shows in the country. That's Mr. TJ Downing. I'm going to drop him in right now and see if he's ready to talk to us.
What's going on, guys?
Can you hear us, buddy?
I got you loud and clear, buddy.
Hey, how you doing today, TJ?
You know what? Doing pretty good, man. We're getting closer to football, man. Just hearing you guys talk about people making throws in national championship games, man, that'll get you excited, right?
Yeah, for somebody who played in a couple national championship games, that's got to ring true to you. I appreciate you joining us today, and I wanted to jump right into something with you, because I didn't know if you saw this, but about 30 minutes ago, one of the top tight ends in the country, Jelani Thurman out of Georgia, just committed to Ohio State. He's joining Brandon Inniss, Carnell Tate, Noah Rogers, and Bryson Rogers now, who have all committed to Ohio State in 2023. He's the number 3 tight end in the country. This guy's 6'5", 230. He could have gone anywhere, but he wanted to go where your boy from Canton, Brian Hartline, where he's at. Talk to me a little bit about Brian. You know him probably better than anybody, or just as well as anybody. How the hell is he doing this? And is he going to stay at Ohio State for a while, hopefully, and keep doing this? That's my first question to you.
Well, to kind of answer all of them, I'll answer the tail end one first. I mean, somebody's going to be throwing this dude a bag load of cash to come and be head coach of their football team eventually, right? It's just, that's a natural progression, right?
Yeah.
And it really doesn't hurt when you got the NFL draft on there in front of everybody. Every kid, has a dream of making money and going and playing in the NFL. And Brian Hartline has a guy go 11, 12, and 13 in the first round. I mean, really, at that point, recruiting is over. You don't have to recruit anymore. Listen, look what my guys are doing. They're going in the first round. They're getting paid. They're getting tens of millions of dollars. So, he goes into somebody's living room and says, listen, we're going to help you be a better person. We're going to give you the right tools to be successful here at Ohio State on campus. But you know what? You want to get to the league? Come and play for the Buckeyes. And I think when an issue or something that we always talked about when I played, when you've got guys like Pitt and Beanie, you've got guys like Teddy Ginn and Santonio Holmes and Anthony Gonzalez and Robisky and Hartline, you have to remember that there's only one football, so you cannot be selfish. There's going to be guys that are, some of those tight ends. And from day one, guys, I've always been heavy on the tight ends. I think they create mismatches. I think a great tight end can really dominate an offense and dominate an opposing defense, really, and give you those options in the middle of the field. But, man, there's only one football, and there's a lot of dudes that want to have that thing spread around to. I mean, hey, are we going to throw the tight end this time, or do we just want to keep throwing it to Smith and Jigba? Because
and that led to, obviously, we remember Jamison Williams. I mean, this guy couldn't really get on the field a whole lot for the Buckeyes. I mean, he got on some. He had a little bit of production, but eventually, it led to him transferring to Alabama. And holy shit, look what he did last year for the Crimson Tide. I mean, he tore it up. In fact, they probably little Stetson probably wouldn't have won his title if Jamison Williams would have stayed on the field and not torn his ACL. And hell, then he still gets drafted number 10 overall to Detroit. So that's my thing is, can he keep all these guys? And I don't know. I mean, that's like what you said. It comes down to whether or not these guys can put the selfishness aside and really work towards the team goals. But hell, they know if they're committing with 4 other guys that are there's 3 top 9 receivers that all committed to the same place. I think they've got to know, right, that they're going to have to share the ball.
Yeah, I mean, the key word it always comes back to is being selfish. Are you willing to go out there and be a decoy this play, knowing that you're not going to get the ball? Are you willing to sacrifice those touches so that you can go into a place like Ann Arbor or go into a place like Happy Valley and get a victory? Just thinking about that concept that, hey, I may not touch the ball today, but I'm going to have an impact for this team, for this offense somehow in us getting a hard-fought Big Ten victory. But, a lot of these guys, it's really hard to sit there and tell a kid that. They want the ball. They're playmakers. They're dynamic. The skill set of some of these guys nowadays, I mean, I just rattled off to you 4 receivers that I played with that I thought are pretty good. But, I mean, these guys – Olave, Jamison Williams, Smith and Jigba, things that they've done, they are changing the game. They're kind of revolutionizing it, man. I mean, Chris Olave, look at the numbers in the career this dude just put up at Ohio State. It is absolutely ridiculous. And he may not have been the best receiver on the field. Yeah. When you look at what Smith and Jigba in the Rose Bowl, oh my God. Dude went off.
Now, is it weird to think that UCLA and USC are going to be regularly part of the Big Ten? I mean, at some point, are we going to be talking Hawaii at some point being part of the Big Ten, where they're going to have a game in Ann Arbor in November? I mean, what are your thoughts on bringing USC and UCLA? So now that we've become the coast-to-coast Big Ten conference.
No, to me, it's interesting. When you just look at travel and finances, just putting football to the side, putting basketball to the side, your big money makers. How does this work out for basketball or for baseball and wrestling and track and field? I think there are some challenges there that financially are going to present a hurdle. I mean, look at just travel costs alone. I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing to add these guys, and it looks like the way of the world moving forward is going to be the powers that be are finding a way to form like 2 super conferences. So I think Bonneville, you're right, man. There's going to be more dudes that are going to jump in this pool. I mean, I know that they've already talked about wanting to grab Notre Dame. I know that there might be some issues there with the ACC, but to me, it would always be logical first, logistically, to try and get a Pitt and a Notre Dame because they're right in our backyard. But I see more guys coming, and who's going to be the next one to sign on with the SEC? I mean, they're all looking for it. They're all trying to bolster up and really present this 2-conference super battle right here, and it's interesting to me, but I don't know if I 100% like it. We all know what it comes down to at the end of the day. It's a cash grab,
cash
right?
flow.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, I just heard this week that in the LA TV market, the Big Ten Network was getting 10 cents a subscriber per month. Now they're going to get $1.50 per subscriber per month. I mean, you're taking the number 2 market in the country. I mean, we're going to be talking over $1 billion in this next TV deal, depending on who they bring in next. I mean, do we look at an Amazon or an Apple and do a streaming service to show college football games where the number even gets more crazy? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the powers that be are already having that conversation, brother. It is. I mean, Apple and Amazon, they kind of rule the world right now as it is. So, when they see other people ringing that register, they want to ring the register too. So, just hearing that number going from 10 cents a play to $1.50 a play. I mean, dude, you're talking astronomical numbers, and the big companies, they're going to find their way to those dollars eventually. And I think you see just the sponsorship game and the naming rights game nowadays is about to take off in a whole different direction because of NIL. But with these super conferences and the people that, the big companies, the bona fide companies, the Amazons and the Apples that you talk about, they're going to jump in there as well. And don't think that those guys aren't already looking for a way to attract the players and the schools and the conferences. It's threefold. Get them all, and you rule the whole college football landscape.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And we talked last week a lot about how, the Pac-12, this is a big hit for them, losing USC and UCLA. I mean, those are the 2 most identifiable teams in that conference over the last 100 years. I mean, let's be honest. Those are. And losing them is huge. And what happens to them next? I mean, do they dissolve? It sounds to me like the Big 12 has reached out to Arizona State, Washington, a couple of teams trying to add them because the Big 12 is scrambling right now too, losing Oklahoma and Texas. It's just crazy to me to see this conference realignment. I mean, we saw it a few years ago when Maryland and Rutgers joined the conference. I was kind of like, don't love those 2 teams joining the Big Ten, but whatever. We can score 60 points 2 more times a year. That's great. But it wasn't as a big of a shift as what's happening right now. TJ, I just want to get your thoughts on what you think may happen. Does the Pac-12 survive? And what do you think the Big 12 looks like? Because we've seen now UCF, BYU, Cincinnati, they're joining the Big 12. So it looks like they may have some teams to stick around, but can they be one of those mega conferences? I don't think so. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you mentioned Rutgers coming in. It wasn't Greg Schiano's Rutgers. It was coming in. Rights back down and competing hard, and they've it's interesting to see how they can kind of develop and how they can try and pull some of these what would you call 2-3 star recruits that maybe are a diamond in the rough that are going to pan out for you and give you a chance maybe one day to try and compete with the upper echelon of the Big Ten. I think what you mentioned about the Pac and the Big 12, let's be honest here, guys. They've been taking shots for years. People have always been saying, hey, Big 12 soft, Big 12 soft. We were talking about, we were going down there just trying to get some payback on Texas when we went down to Austin in 07 and had to beat their ass.
Yeah.
They have to go and they have to get to Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati helped everybody's case by making it to the playoffs last year. Win, lose, or draw, whatever, they made it there. So now, you're going to have to look to, the Boise States, the TCUs, people that the guys that have kind of they've really had to make their bones out there by trying to compete with the bigger teams. Now they're going to start to get the look. And Cincinnati, to me, what they've done, man, it's been so cool to watch, especially with it being Fickle. Knowing the type of guy he is, knowing how running that program. And hey, I'm over here telling you about all the cash that somebody's going to throw at Brian Hartline to come and be a head coach somewhere someday. Just to think that if it kind of tells you a little bit about the person that Luke Fickle is, he's had those offers already. But he's still staying there with the Bearcats because that he's building something special. There's not a lot of dudes who are willing to do something like that. But he's a guy that sees it through, builds it from the ground up, the foundation up. And he's done that, man. How fun has it been to see? How fun would it have been to see the Buckeyes and the Bearcats line up last year? That's the Battle of Ohio, Battleground Ohio, man. Let's go.
Yeah, no, I would have been awesome. And I think back a couple of years ago when they did come to the Shoe and it was a slaughter. And honestly, I watched them play last year and I was like, man, if they did come to the Shoe again, it'd be a lot closer. And I just remember what happened with, he took over when the unfortunate situation occurred where Tressel had to step down and, my boy TP couldn't play and all that crap. And I thought Fickle did a hell of a job, keeping the guys together and winning 6 games that year. I thought it was pretty amazing. And so the fact that he got another chance to be a head coach and went down to Cincinnati and has done what he's done, it makes me happy. And I love the guy because
anybody gets thrown into a situation like that where, you got a guy who in Tress who's about to probably surpass Woody Hayes at that point as maybe the greatest all-time coach in Ohio State history. I mean, he was on that trajectory before the whole carpet got pulled out from underneath. And so anybody gets thrown in that situation, whether you're Fickle or you're freaking Nick Saban, there's going to be a little bit of a balancing act there. There's a juggling act and trying to figure it out all on the fly and checking in with team morale. I mean, that was at an all-time low right there. And what I think that may have been, would they end up going to roughly 6-4? So I know that was one of the times that Michigan was able to beat us up there.
Yeah, I think they finished 6-6 at the end of the season.
Still commendable
it was 6-6.
You had to go through, and I think everybody at that point kind of knew, Fick is going to get his chance again somewhere. I know there was a big stir about the Akron Zips at one point that they were heavy on him. And, everybody knew that he was going to get a shot. It was really, I think he had to reel it back in and say, you know what, this is a mega monster that I'm getting into here, man. I mean, you see coaches when they go in and they got color in their hair. And when they leave, it's all white and gray. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not an easy job. There's a ton of pressure that comes along with it. But I think we all knew that, Fick was going to gather his troops, get behind his family and figure out what was best for him. Great that he stayed in the state of Ohio. Great that he's been able to build up the Bearcats. And we all knew that once he got that second shot again, that he was going to have success because it's in his DNA. I mean, geez, go back to the dude wrestling at St. Francis de Sales, just racking dudes up, to being the all-time starts leader until Billy Price broke it. I think Fick was at like 50 or 51 starts over his career. I mean, the dude is just he's a man's man. And I'll tell you what, I've seen this guy. We used to have what we called hoot and holler drill. And this was the first full pad practice of either spring or training camp in the fall. And you got out there. It was the first live hitting drill, similar to like an Oklahoma type deal. And Fick would get out there and guys would be chirping and fighting at the end of plays. And Fick would get out there, no pads, no helmet on, and he would whoop dudes' asses. Like 22-year-old grown man with helmets, shoulder pads, knee braces, cleats, and he would just be dropping dudes at the end of plays like, hey, get back to your side. And he would just lay somebody out.
Love
Wow. Wow. Hey, we've been talking about recruiting in our early part of our show. What was your recruiting story like coming out of Canton, out of Glen Oak, and your process in getting to Ohio State? I know you looked at Michigan, Illinois, and Pitt, but what was going through your mind, and what was that process like for you?
Well, oh yeah, and James, his dad played at Michigan. Or God, did I just say that word out loud? The team up north.
I cannot believe you
So
just
he,
said that.
TJ went the other direction. So
Yeah, and the old man took some flack up there for that. Coach Schembechler was still alive at that time, and he told him, he said, "Walt, how could you let your son go to the enemy? How dare you? You come to Harbor and you pull a coat over your head. Don't let anybody see you. You should be embarrassed." I'll tell you this much: the recruiting landscape has changed so much. I told somebody a funny story the other day that my first scholarship offer was actually from Urban Meyer. He was at Bowling Green. He called me up. I was a sophomore. He said, "Hey, man, I want to offer you a scholarship. I know you're not going to take it, but just, so Bowling Green wants you to have a full scholarship." And I'm like, "Coach, thanks. I appreciate it." And yeah, I knew that, I guess from day one, I felt like I wanted to be a Big Ten player. I was recruited heavy by your Tennessee Volunteers and Phil Fulmer. I really, really was interested in going down to Knoxville and checking in there. I had some other teams from down south recruit me, but really for me, it was between Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Purdue. They were kind of in that mix for me as well. Penn State, ironically, was the only team in the Big Ten that didn't offer me.
wow.
And my dad and I kind of figured it went back to way back when he was getting recruited in the mid-'70s. There was a gas crunch and inside of Pennsylvania. And so Joe Paterno didn't get out. He was going to sign my dad to a full scholarship. And he didn't get out. And then they told my dad it was over a gas crunch. Well, they actually lied to him. And they went and signed this receiver who ended up having a pretty nice career, Jimmy Cephalo. And so they signed Cephalo. And they dogged out my dad. And the next day, my dad's like, "You know what? Screw you guys. I'm going up Bo Schembechler." So maybe they were still upset from back in like 1974. I don't know, but the recruiting process was, once you get it narrowed down, you figure out what feels the closest to home to you. And I can tell you this: when Coach Tress came in, he was saying things like, we want you, we need you, we love you, we want you to be a part of the family. We got something special that's going on here. We're going to start beating Michigan again. We're going to compete for national championships. And as an 18-year-old kid, I'm like, wow, this is 2 hours down the street from my house. This is a perfect setup, right? Michigan, on the other hand, just said, "You know what? Lloyd Carr, Terry Malone, Stan Parrish," he said, "Here, TJ, here's a scholarship. Sign it whenever you're ready."
Wow.
That's it.
Wow. Thanks, guys.
Now with NIL, maybe they would have dropped off that duffel bag full of cash. That would have been cool. Like, here's a scholarship. Sign it when you're ready. And Tress's whole pitch was just different to me. And that was where that, I think, a little bit of that that old school recruiting style has been lost in what we're seeing in today's landscape, where you got a guy that's coming in there and pitching you on their university, in your weight room, at your school, at your house, with your mom and dad, on campus, walking you out onto the field. And, hey, when you see facilities like that, it's great. Now, I think some of those guys owe us a big thank you down there at Ohio State, because all those new facilities got built after we left. So they took all that money that we rallied up for them there. They got a brand new Woody Hayes Center and all types of new toys and gigs down there. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. They got a pool table. They got a barber. They got a whole players lounge inside the Woody Hayes Center. I'm like, man, I would have never left this place. We're running all over town trying to find things to do. And, God knows what we were getting into at midnight. These guys got freaking pool tables and all types of deals. They probably got a full wet bar up there in Woody Hayes.
I think Colorado has a lazy river at their football complex.
Shit, I could handle that. Yeah, we talked to Johnny Nicky last week, And Donnie, he kind of said the same thing when we were talking about Coach Tressel, and I told a story about the first time I met Coach Tressel and how I still remember it. And he just was a guy that you could tell how legit he was as a human being. Not only is he one of the greatest football coaches of all time, but in my opinion, but he's also one of the best people that I've ever come in contact with. And I think if you ever spent time with him, you kind of get that. And to piggyback off that, I want to talk about the dude in charge right now. I mean, we've been talking about recruiting, how much it's changed, how crazy it is right now that these kids that have never taken a snap on a college football field are getting paid to go somewhere. I mean, that's not really what the NIL was designed for. It was supposed to be able to pay the kids that have done something. But that's not how it's working. They're handing these kids cash to go places. But at the same time, Ryan Day is dealing with it. Ryan Day has taken all the things that have happened around and he's compartmentalized it. I just have been very impressed with Coach Day from day one. And I seem to be more impressed as we go along. I just want to get your thoughts on, the whole sphere of what Ryan Day has done since taking over in Columbus and what you think about him as a coach and as a guy.
Well, I'll give you one little Tress thing that is really, and I know Tress and Coach Day talk all the time. I know that with some of the COVID stuff that was going on, I remember having some conversations with Tress on the phone, and he's telling me like, "Yo, Coach Day called me up today, man. He's freaking out." It's like he has a great support system there with Coach Tress, and Coach Tress used to tell us, "You win with people." They kind of trademarked that slogan down there. You win with people. And that's true all the way through at Ohio State. He's got a great support system there. They have somebody in a position who is just in charge of the NIL stuff, you're not scrambling around like trying to pick through the compliance office, trying to figure out, okay, well, what are we going to do about this situation? There's somebody that's already on top of it there for you. So Coach has all of those resources and outlets at his disposal. He's done a phenomenal job. And you're right. NIL to me, just scrapping the whole NIL thing. We were trying to get paid as players for the dudes that are actually out there playing.
Yeah.
And Quinn Ewers comes in and gets a brand new $60,000 truck and $1 million. And like, dude, what have you done? You've done nothing.
Nothing.
Now,
nothing.
And listen, I'm a football fan first. I don't care what colors you wear, what team you're on. I would love to see this kid go down there to Texas and blow them back up because I love Texas when they were good. You know why? Because we should have beat them twice, but we beat them once. It's fun to compete against good teams like that. When they had Vince Young in 2005, that was one of the rawest teams you've ever seen assembled in college football. I want to see Quinn Ewers do something like that, dude. Go back down there. I know that's your hometown area, your home state. You got the oil money down there. Get you some rims for the truck and go on campus in Austin and get something done. I'm pulling for the kid genuinely, but I think you're right, Nate. That's not what it was meant to do. It wasn't meant to be, hey, dude, here's $1 million. Come to my university. No, come to my university, throw me some touchdowns or pancake some dudes, and then we'll talk money.
Yeah. Right.
Hey, you've had a lot of people throughout your life.
Ryan did the whole thing masterfully, man. And that's why he's. I don't know what is he last being paid now? About $8-9 million a year.
Yeah. Earning every penny.
He knows, the dude knows what he's doing, man. He's young, he's talented, and these kids, he relates to them. I mean, he's not too old and removed, but he's into the Snap and the TikTok and the social media and all that stuff. I mean, he gets it. He genuinely gets what these kids are into, and that's going to translate into getting kids into your program and having success on the field.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of influences from family to high school, college coaches. What was the best advice that you received, not only as a player, but made you more as a man later on too, as well, that you could share for other people that want to get into the game or coach or anything like that?
Well, maybe we'll stick to the clean version. There was a couple. You know what? It was really and everybody needs more of this. And it's not just in sports, it's in daily life, because we all take lumps out there, man. And we're not living in a perfect world right now. There's a lot of tough times for a lot of people out there, trying to figure out, just how they're going to put food on the table, or they're going to get gas in their vehicle and get from point A to point B. Really, some of the best advice I ever got, and Tress was never really an X's and O's guys with me. He let Jim Bowman do that for us, but it was the life skill stuff. How do you learn from your losses? How do you learn from your failures? Because, your life is going to be made up. It's great to have success, but it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows your entire life. I used to tell people, I was like, you talking about TP, Terrell Pryor. It's like, these people acted like he was never going to get out there and throw an interception, or Cardale Jones is never going to get out there and throw an interception. I'm like, listen, this ain't how this thing works. You don't just drop 52 every game and throw 7 touchdowns. Eventually, it's going to get bad. It did for him. I believe that was against Purdue, maybe up in Purdue. Yeah. When we found out that he was human. He's human. Oh yeah, he makes errors. He's a quarterback. But learning how to deal with your losses, and I suffered maybe. When you look at this from a player standpoint at Ohio State, I maybe had one of the greatest rises in program history and greatest fall-offs in history. Elevated my team to number 1 in the country. I'm on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I'm first team All Big Ten. I'm the best offensive guard in college football in 2006. Get my team into the game of the century against Michigan. We're number 1, number 2. We beat them in the horseshoe. It's a great scene. We go to the national championship game, and we get smoked 41-14. How do you handle that? How do you deal with that? It's not easy to do. And learning how to learn from your losses.
Yeah.
That's where you make the real magic at. Now you go out there and okay, this is what we can't do. Learning from your failures, learning from your losses. That was taught to me at Ohio State. And fortunately for me, I had I don't even know what the win percentage is, but I only took 3 losses as a starter. And those still stick with me to this day, because I still think about moments from those games, because we could have won them, close one. Just talking about Texas, there's 5 plays from that Texas game. Everybody wants to put it on Ryan Hamby that he dropped a touchdown pass, but we had those guys safetied in the back of the end zone, and I believe it was Cedric Benson ran all the way back around. He could have touched the field goal post in the back of the end zone. He made it all the way back around and out. We safety him there. Game's over. So you have to be able to be smart enough to learn from your losses and study yourself, self-scout yourself, and figure out, okay, this is why I got beat. How do we stop this from happening again?
Yeah, no doubt. I was at that game against Texas in the shoe that year, and man, I'll never forget the walk back to the car after that. Me and my buddy Chris, who's been my best friend for about 25 years, we didn't say shit. We just walked back to the car in silence and kind of pretended like it didn't happen, because we didn't know what to say at that point. But yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about, is bouncing back. And you've done that, TJ. And man, I've been watching all your shows and I love it. So talk to our guys a little bit about what you're doing now. And all the guys, I've been watching all the guys you've had on the show. I told you I watched that interview with Beanie Wells, and some good reminiscing there. Just talk to everybody about the show and how they can watch it.
Well, I'll tell you too, man. I was trying to act like it didn't happen either until I turned on 10 TV News and saw Dom Tiberi on later that evening. We still lost 25-22. It was like, shit, really? I was hoping it really just happened here, but yeah, man. I'll tell you what. I've been fortunate to be able to start some things with some pretty good people. We got, again, win with people, man. And I got some good people in my corner, some guys who've been in the radio business for a long time. My partner in broadcasting is a college football Hall of Famer, Jim Ballard from Mount Union. Hey, shout out to our boy Mike Doss. Mike Doss is going into the College Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he is. Love Mike Doss.
You can find us. Our web's being launched next week at cdiateam.com. And we have the 1372 show. We'll have daily shows. We have our new studio that we just built out over in Massillon, Ohio. right there on Lincoln Way. Got a beautiful skyline drop in the back. So we'll have our daily show coming for you. We're going to get ready to start doing high school football, man. It's back. I know everybody's excited about football, man. And we're super excited up here in Stark County, Northeast Ohio. You guys, if you guys know anything about the football up here, high school football, it's A1, man. We will. We're getting ready to call the Pro Football Hall of Fame East-West game. So the East-West was an all-star game that they did up here for a long time that the local paper had sponsored. They dropped out after COVID. The Pro Football Hall of Fame picked. I don't know if you've seen it. The facility are extraordinary, man. I mean, you're talking a 25,000 seat state-of-the-art stadium for high school kids to play in. They're getting to sit in the same locker rooms that NFL players sat in. They're going to be sitting in 2 weeks from now when we have the Hall of Fame game. So it's really special up here, man. There's a huge buzz going on. We're happy to be alongside it and getting ready to call some of the action for these kids. And it's a special time of year, man. So strap in. We sit here and we complain all spring. And unless you're a diehard baseball fan, which I am, I'm into my Indians. I'm not totally on the Guardians yet, but it's a long wait after football season. It's a long wait after January, and we're finally right here, right, man. September 3rd, Buckeyes and the Irish and the shoe. This is a fun time of year, it rolls all the way into my favorite part of the season or the favorite part of the year with fall and Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and football rides right alongside it, man. This is without a doubt my favorite time of year.
Yeah, there's no doubt, man, and we're all looking forward to it. And I'm gonna have to get with you when I get up there because I'm gonna try and make several games this year. My daughter's a little bit older, so she can ride or die with me now. So I'm gonna try and get up there and get to a few more games and come see you. So we're looking forward to it. And TJ, man, we appreciate you coming on today. As I always love talking to you and love your show, and we'll keep pointing our guys to your direction to check you out and see all the good stuff you're doing.
Appreciate it, man. Hey, anytime you guys need me on, I'm here for you, man. And whenever you get a chance to get some time to make a trip up, man, you reach out to me, man. I'll show you a good time.
I will do it, brother. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again real soon, okay?
Thank you, TJ.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
All right, man. Later. Thanks for your time. God, I love that guy.
Good guy.
Great guy. TJ Downing, co-founder of Stark Media up there in Canton, Ohio, working right out of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, like you said, with co-host Jim Ballard on the QB and the OG show, doing great things. And I, you know what? The biggest thing I took away from that was him talking about, got real for a minute. He talked about, being at the top and then, going to the bottom and he's back up top. And that's how you, in my opinion, judge someone. That's how you can see what somebody is made of. It's real easy to look good when you're on top, but it's another thing to see how you can bounce back maybe when things don't go your way.
Well, especially after that game against Florida. I mean, it's real easy to get inside your head, but get back up that, maybe dust yourself off a bit, take a little bit of break, but then come back a week later and just try to make yourself better tomorrow than you were today. And it's interesting hearing those former Trestle players talk not about X's and O's, but life lessons. Not only they could take as a football player, but as a husband, a man, a person in the community.
Everybody we talk to, in case you haven't noticed, says the exact same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
They say the exact same thing. They say that Coach Trestle, TJ today, last week, Donnie Nicky, all the guys that we've had on the show, Bobby Carpenter, everybody has said the same thing, that Coach Trestle, the reason they went to play with him and the reason they love him to this day is, what he meant to them and how much he cared about them as a person and not just a player. And that was, I thought the other thing that was really cool was how, TJ kind of let us in the back room for a minute and talk to us about how, Coach Trestle to this day still tries to help Coach Day. A lot of people based upon what happened to Coach Tressel, would have, maybe detached themselves from the university after all that went on and all the crap that he took, following the 2010 season. But, he took it in stride. And instead of doing that, he's, it strengthened those relationships and done everything he can to try and help the program that threw him out, basically, and tried to help Coach Day to have continued success along his journey. So that's the kind of guy that he is. And, that's the kind of guy TJ is, learning, like you said, asking him who he learned from. And Tress was one of the guys he brought up because, he's been a big influence on all of his former players. And thank God they're finally honoring that 2002 team this year in the opener back at the Shoe when they play Notre Dame. They're going to have Coach Tressel there and all the guys from the 02 team back for a celebration. So that'll be cool. But awesome show today. I enjoyed talking some recruiting, talking some tight ends, and then talking to TJ Downing, former All Big Ten guard for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and also now, in the media doing great things. So hope everybody enjoyed it.
Could you imagine what the conversations between he and his father must be before the game?
Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic, man. His dad, Walt Downing, just in case anybody doesn't know, Walt was All-American at the team up north in the state above Ohio and played for Bo Schembechler, and then went on to the NFL and won a Super Bowl with the 1982 San Francisco 49ers. So his dad's got a lot of stories too. And I think it's really cool how, he let his son make his own decision.
Yeah.
And, and stuck with him through it. I think that's pretty awesome, especially considering his own history. So, it has to be a really interesting Saturday when those two teams clash and you got those two guys in a room together.
That's got to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. TJ's a cool guy. So hopefully we'll get to have him on some more, and maybe I'll talk to him about coming back on regularly, because I'd love to add him to the mix with us.
Absolutely. Well, Nate, as usual, always good to see you, my man.
Yeah, you too, brother. I appreciate all you do, and I appreciate you joining me today and taking time out of your Sunday to bring all your knowledge to the table. It was good to hear, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. And we'll talk again real soon, okay?
You got it. We'll see you then.
All right, buddy.
Same